Welcome to this episode of the PA System. On this episode, I'm talking with Alyssa Burgoyne about how to create a powerful brand. Welcome to the show, Alyssa.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. I'm excited about this because I feel like this is one of those topics that people really enjoy. It's kind of a fun topic.
I agree. There's honestly so much more that goes into a brand sometimes than we realize. And so it's nice to get the chance to deep dive into it and share some of the knowledge that I've gained over the last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we jump in, for those in the audience who maybe haven't met you or don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about you and how you ended up starting your business.
My name is Alyssa, as you said. I live in British Columbia, Canada, and I am a stay-at-home mom on top of being a business owner. So I have two kids who are almost 11 and 3, and my husband. We live in a beautiful mountain town. We moved actually, so my husband could be home for the first time ever. So that's been really exciting. I started my business just after my maternity leave was up. When my daughter was born, I was a full-time nurse actually in psychiatry, and I worked full-time night shifts. So back then, my husband and I owned a trucking company. He was gone all the time, and both of us were not crazy about the idea of our daughter not seeing either of us.
Sure.
And so it just made sense for me to be home. And so as my daughter got older and more independent, it kind of got to the point where it's like, what do I do when she's napping? Like, you can only clean the house and do so much laundry, right? And then
Right.
you're just kind of restless and looking for something else. And I've
Sure.
never was never able to shake that feeling like there was something more I should be doing.
Yeah.
So that's how my business was born, and it has grown from solopreneurship to full digital agency, which is amazing and exciting and sometimes crazy and busy,
Yeah.
but it's all been really good. So now my business is called Clear Directions Virtual Solutions, and we have a team of 5 people right now, and we serve our clients who are mostly small to medium sized businesses, and then some solopreneurs.
Love it. So, how did you go from nursing to running a digital agency?
Yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting shift, hey? So it's funny. I actually back in the day, when I started looking for work as a virtual assistant. So
Mm,
back when you Googled virtual assistant, that was 10 years ago. So
yeah.
there wasn't a whole lot that came up back then. You got a lot of like admin jobs, but a lot that you couldn't do virtually at that point, and people weren't really open to it.
Right.
So I actually found my very first VA position on Kijiji of all things. It was another VA that was looking for some help with the tasks that she had taken on. And funny enough, we still remain friends to this day. We've worked on and off together for the last 10 years. She just took a chance on me. And had she not, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So
Mm,
it was really interesting. I found through my journey that given that my background is so different than business, it definitely has created some imposter syndrome here and there.
mhm.
It's interesting because healthcare, for the longest time, I kept saying, I don't have any skills that apply to this. I don't have any skills that apply to this. And it's funny because one of my mentors actually sat down and she looked at me and she said, "What do you mean you don't have skills for this?" She said, "You can work in a high paced, high stress environment." She
Right.
said, "You give excellent customer service because you have the skills to deal with grieving families or struggling families or patients who are in very stressful situations." So it's interesting. I guess it just took that mindset shift to see that it really wasn't all that different. And then I think my psych background is helpful for things like branding and marketing and even just understanding people and the way they work. And I feel like it's really beneficial in terms of how you work with other people, like especially internally on my team. And then when it comes to clients as well, I am a firm believer that certain personalities will work better together than others. And I am fully open about that on all of my potential client calls. I think it's important that we have a casual chat first to make sure we're the right fit because a right
Mm.
fit makes the relationship so much more beneficial for the client.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's something that does get overlooked often in kind of the client intake process. And so, and a lot of that is probably more so for maybe like early stage businesses. But it's something important to have in mind, certainly. So, in regards to branding, how did you create your own brand, and then what did that growth process look like for you? How long did it really take you to kind of get up and going?
Okay, so starting back, thinking back in the day, like I really ran under my own name as my own brand for the longest time. And I just made the transition to Clear Directions actually last year. And it was a transition that needed to happen for a while. But of course, it was one of those things that it's like, we're busy with client work, we have things that are higher priority. So it kept falling to the back burner. And then one day I had a call with a client and she said to me, she said, it's kind of confusing. She said, "I looked at your website, it's your name, I didn't realize you had a team." And it was like this light bulb went off and I went, "Yep, no, you're right, that is really confusing." And I spent that weekend hashing out what I wanted things to look like. So it took us about a month to finalize logos and colors and all, and fonts and things. And then the website redesign, of course, took about 8 weeks, which is pretty normal for a website project. But it was just that kind of realization and hearing it from someone else that like, hey, this is causing confusion, that made me go, okay, it's time. Like I can't say this to my clients about how important this is and then not reflect that in my own practice.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that. What did that rebranding process look like? And how does that relate to how someone would brand their business initially?
So the rebranding process is very similar to an initial brand, which is there's a few elements that go into it. So I think the most important element is to develop your purpose and clarify what you want to offer. So it's important when you're thinking about the brand you're developing, what problems you're solving for your clients, and can you clearly explain what your product or service does for the customers. It's those pain points are going to be what makes it relatable to the people you're selling to, and if you can clearly articulate the benefits, then it will help them clearly see what they are getting from investing in your product or service. So for us, it was time to kind of take a look at what we were offering, and there was some services that we ended up letting go of, just things that there wasn't anyone on the team that was lit up and excited about doing those things anymore. They had learned new skills and they were more interested in practicing those skills. And we just didn't have a lot of interest in a few of the services. So those fell by the wayside. We didn't want to stretch ourselves too thin over to offering too much. So that's how we kind of made the determination over what we kept and what we didn't in the new branding process, which I think is super important. We all get into business to do things that we love to do and things that make us excited to jump out of bed in the morning. And when it gets to the point that you're not feeling that way anymore, it's a good indication it's time for a change. Then the next thing that we wanted to focus on, and this comes from developing your purpose as well, and crosses over a little bit into market research, is what makes you different from your competition and why should they choose you over the next company. So a lot of that comes from your purpose and clarifying your offers. People want to work with people who feel human and that they feel they can trust. If you can establish that human connection and rapport with your clients, you will have a better chance of converting them into a paying customer versus what your competitors are doing. Then that last piece of the puzzle for developing your purpose is your mission statement and your vision. You need to be able to show your target audience not only what you offer, but who you are. And you want to make sure that the voice you use within your brand is putting a face on your business, if that makes sense. There's nothing that feels more impersonal than not feeling that human connection, that organic conversation when you're trying to talk to someone, and it will also help you establish rapport. Now, to jump into a little bit further, getting to know your competition. So, one of the biggest things that we look at when we're putting a brand together is also who competitors are. So, there's a few different elements that go into competitor research. We look at their websites, their brand colors, their voice, and who their target market is. So, taking a deep dive through things like their online reviews, who's commenting on their social media, what types of people are interacting with them online, and to see what they offer and what they're doing differently than what we did. So, very similar to rebranding for Clear Directions, we do this for clients as well. And those audits of your competitors' online activities help us to know if, for example, if there's somebody that's very similar to your business and they're using specific brand colors already, we know to kind of not necessarily completely steer clear of them, but utilize them in a different way. If blue is their primary, maybe we don't use blue as your primary, just so that we can draw that line in the sand to separate you. There's nothing worse than having someone come to you and think that you are from one business when you're another. Um, Now, a compelling story is the other piece of the puzzle. And interestingly enough, it tends to be the piece that often gets missed, which can be a bit of a challenge. So storytelling is a really powerful way to connect people with ideas and knowledge. The stories also help you build rapport and familiarity, which makes your company relatable to your target audience. So, just like we each individually have our own story, your business should have its own too. It can be as simple as a story that tells people how you got to where you were, how your company was established, why you started offering the services you offer, what makes you excited, what makes you jump out of bed in the morning, what are you passionate about, and how does that tie into your business. So, for clear directions, I know that I shared earlier about somebody took a chance on me, hired me as a stay at home mom with little experience. I had run our trucking company from the home office and did all our bookkeeping and admin work. But aside from that, I really had limited experience. I was good with a computer, and that was about all I had when I started. So it's good to be able to tell that story and how you got to where you are today. Now, a big part of the Clear Directions brand is that our team consists of parents who want to stay home with their kids. And it's my way of giving back because somebody did that once for me, and I wouldn't be sitting here and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be with my kids full time, there when they're sick, there when they have activities, and not missing out on those little moments like first steps and first words, because somebody took a chance on me. And so that has become a big part of who we are at Clear Directions. And interestingly enough, a lot of our target clients then are also parents who are building businesses. It's nice when you have common ground though, and when you're able to tell your story effectively and efficiently in a way that your target audience can relate, it will also help you bring in your target audience because we tend, I guess, like attracts like, right? So it's interesting if you can tell your story, who it will bring into your business. Now, the other thing to consider about compelling story, a lot of people jump over that aspect of creating a brand, but it really is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle because people understand and interpret stories in a different way than having a regular conversation. So we can jump on a call, I can tell you about my business, I can tell you who I am, but if I don't have a story that grabs your attention behind it and it's just a dry conversation, the likelihood of the person on the other end of the phone remembering what I said, they're only gonna remember a fraction of what I told them versus the majority. So if you can frame your interactions as a story and let people know who you are, who your business is, and what you're passionate about, and what you're there to do to help them, it will help them interpret what you do in a different way and helps their brain process it in a different way. Now, the other benefit is that people are more likely to retell a story than they are to tell what you guys spoke about on the phone. So that compelling story really doesn't end there. It's something that will continue to give back to your business over and over and over. Um, Lastly, it comes down to the elements of creating your brand identity. That's your logos and the different variations of that, the name of your business, and the voice for your brand, as well as the colors and the fonts that you want to use in your branding. So it's important when you're choosing a business name that you don't want to choose anything that is unclear or leaves too much to interpretation. When people see your brand and your logo, you want them to recognize what it is you offer and become easily easily become the trusted source for that specific service or product, if that makes sense. Now, there's many different elements that go into your brand identity. However, the first things that people generally think of are your colors and your fonts. So your fonts should always be clear, easy to read at both large and small sizes and at different weights. So be mindful when you're creating your brand to pay attention to those little things because you might find the perfect font, but when you make it bold so that something stands out, maybe in the future on a social media graphic, all of a sudden the words get jumbled and the font is really hard to read. So that isn't ideal. And then the colors all have different meanings. So you want to make sure that you're picking colors that align with your brand values and the feelings that you want to evoke in your customers. For example, blues are known for exuding confidence, security, trusting. It gives the feeling of trust, loyalty, cleanliness, and calm, which is generally are all really good things to have in business. Uh, Pink colors are calm, respectful, romantic, and warm. So they might be great for something like a dating agency, a coaching agency, maybe a life coaching agency. Um, Yellows are generally optimistic, happy, cheerful. Red is one that it can be a little bit aggressive, so you have to be a little bit careful with red. Red generally people associate with a stop sign, right? So you wanna be really mindful of things like that in your branding so that when somebody sees your logo, they don't immediately go, "Ooh," and have this subconscious thought that's associated red with a stop sign and don't proceed, right? So it's important that you think about all of those elements and that you can study the color wheel. You want to make sure that you have an understanding of how different colors complement each other and how to utilize them in your marketing materials going forward. So, for example, if you're creating, uh, let's say, an infographic in the future, you want to make sure that you have brand colors that will show up clearly in print materials, that will show up clearly on social media images, that will show up clearly with the fonts that you've chosen. So sometimes it takes a little bit of deter of playing around with the different colors to determine what's the right fit. One of the best, trainings that I had in terms of choosing your brand colors was to actually create a Pinterest board that was your business name, um, and just scroll through your feed and paint colors for houses, pictures of furniture, images that you're drawn to. It could be images of nail designs, tattoos, carpet colors, vinyl flooring, pictures for your house, anything. Any of the colors you're drawn to, just drop them into that Pinterest board and then go back after and see what you've dropped in there. And interestingly enough, that's actually where the colors for Clear Directions came from. So I took I was having a lot of trouble finding the inspiration for the new brand, and I wasn't sure what to do, and that was one of the trainings I took, and so I ended up it was funny, I opened the board and I went, "Oh, that seems really clear," but when you're doing, I guess, thinking about it subconsciously and not focusing so hard on it, it was a lot easier to determine what was the right fit. Um, and interestingly enough, the lighthouse just has kind of a personal tie. I I really love the ocean. I love lighthouses. Every time we get near the ocean, I have to find a lighthouse to get into. It's just a thing for our family. And so to me, the ocean brings calmness and clarity, and lighthouses are kind of that light in the dark, right? They guide you home safely, and they bring you that sense of peace. So that's that is the experience I want our clients to have when they work with us at Clear Directions. I want them to feel at peace. I want them to come to us feeling chaotic and say, "Hey, these are all the things I have on my plate that are overwhelming me," and be able to work with them so that their day to day is no longer overwhelming. Um, I want us to be kind of that beacon of light, that beacon of hope for them that keeps their business calm, functioning, moving forward without requiring them working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and losing sleep over being stressed. The last element of that brand identity that I wanna touch on is your brand voice. So that's another element that's really important, And who your target market is an important thing to consider when determining your brand voice. For us at Clear Directions, we are very open, very friendly, very welcoming. I want everyone to feel welcome, and I also wanna give the impression that we are all family based, and so, we understand. I've had clients call me the morning of saying, "We're supposed to have a meeting today. I can't meet. I have kids homesick." I get that. I've also been in that position, and so, the brand voice that I wanna put out into the world is one of understanding and clarity and being able to adapt to a change in situation, which is generally how it goes when you work from home with kids or just have kids in general. So, um, I think if your target market is more of corporate clients, your tone of voice is going to be very different than speaking directly to a solopreneur or someone who owns a small business but's only been in business for a couple of years. Um, I want clear directions to put out into the world that we are a safe space. If, I've had calls with clients that end up being more of a, I just need to get this stuff off my chest. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm challenged by. This happened in my personal life, and this is not, this is impacting my ability to get this done in business because I can't focus on this. And if that's what your call with me needs to be, that's okay. This is a safe space to process whatever you need to process so that we can move you forward in your business. Um, I hope all that makes sense. I know there's a lot that goes into creating a powerful brand. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's the things that, you look online and you look up what it is to create a brand and they'll give you this XYZ checklist, but not every business fits into that, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, those are really all great suggestions. And I love that you bring in the human element of it because really our businesses are an entity of themselves, sure, but we're working with people, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's really powerful. I mean, I can relate to you in that sense. I mean, I've had recent conversations with clients where, a good percentage of the conversation is like, let's deal with these personal elements of what we're talking about because there's so much of you that goes into your business and you can't separate those out from one another. So I appreciate you sharing that. And like you said, even down the road a few years, you've decided to rebrand. And I can tell you, even recently myself, I've been looking at some of my things and going, that served me a couple of years ago. I'm not sure it totally serves me now. And there are probably some things I want to do a little bit differently. And that's great. I mean, it's okay if you don't marry your brand, and you live together for a little while
Exactly, exactly. You know what? Just
too.
like
So,
we're meant to grow personally, our businesses are supposed to grow and change too, right? And so
yeah,
sometimes what we have at the current moment doesn't always suit us or fit with where we're going, and that's okay. It's okay to grow, it's okay to change, and in fact, those are both good things. I think that sometimes people get stuck in that though. Like, I created this brand and they do believe it's a marriage that has to last forever and ever.
right.
So it can be tricky. Interestingly enough, what you had touched on about how it's important to recognize that yes, we're people, but we're still tied to our business. I just actually had that conversation with my business coach last week. And she had a really interesting way of putting it that was very similar to what you said. Like, we have to remember that you can't just completely separate from your business. You're still a human, as are your clients, right? And so sometimes that human element, I find, um, it takes away from the personalization of your brand. And then the last thing we want is for our brands to feel cold from the outside, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you also shared that I thought was really kind of powerful is when you're coming up with these things that resonate with you, just know that, in 3 to 5 years, if those aren't the same things, it is okay. Like you're going to be able to shift at that point. So you don't need to feel the pressure in that moment. I think that's part of the issue that people face when creating their brand is that there's so much pressure to get it right. And it's like, no, it's okay if it's right for right now. And then if you
Exactly.
do change it later, that will be okay too.
Exactly. Nothing in the online world is forever. And I agree. You know what? Almost all of the branding clients that we have worked with have felt like that. They've come to us and said, "Look, I've been trying to do this for months and I don't know what to do, but this is what I want." And so it's really, I think it's really empowering for them to be able to come and say, and even just the acceptance that, hey, you know what? It's time for me to move, time for me to move forward with this. And I need to reach out and get help for this because this is where I'm stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being here. I know that the audience got a ton of gold nuggets. I hope they were taking notes. So I appreciate that. And if people want to connect with you, where is the best place for them to do that?
Right, I have Instagram. Our handle is Clear Directions Virtual, or on our website, it's www.cleardirectionsvs.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. Any closing thoughts that you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up today?
I don't think so. Just know that if you're struggling to develop your brand, you're not alone. We've all been there. Even the most established businesses have been there. It takes deliberation and back and forth. And just like you had mentioned earlier, you're not married to it forever. So the biggest thing is try not to overthink it.
Love that. Well, and to all of you out there listening, thank you again for being here with us. We appreciate you. If you got something out of this today and this has benefited you, please, by all means, share it. You never know who else might benefit from it as well. So, thank you again for being with us. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Goodbye, everyone.